and Diodorus Siculus all differed from Herodotus, as well as from each other, regarding the name of the builder of this supreme edifice. The sepulchral vault, which, according to the Lepsius law of pyramid construction, should have been finished at the same time as the monument or sooner, was never completed. There is no proof that the building was erected by the Egyptians, for the elaborate carvings with which the burial chambers of Egyptian royalty are almost invariably ornamented are entirely lacking, and it embodies none of the elements of their architecture or decoration, such as inscriptions, images, cartouches, paintings, and other distinctive features associated with dynastic mortuary art. The only hieroglyphics to be found within the pyramid are a few builders' marks sealed up in the chambers of construction, first opened by Howard Vyse. These apparently were painted upon the stones before they were set in position, for in a number of instances the marks were either inverted or disfigured by the operation of fitting the blocks together. While Egyptologists have attempted to identify the crude dabs of paint as cartouches of Cheops, it is almost inconceivable that this ambitious ruler would have permitted his royal name to suffer such indignities. As the most eminent authorities on the subject are still uncertain as to the true meaning of these crude markings, whatever proof they might be that the building was erected during the 4th dynasty is certainly offset by the seashells at the base of the pyramid, which Mr. Gabb advances as evidence that it was erected before the deluge, a theory substantiated by the much-abused Arabian traditions. One Arabian historian declared that the pyramid was built by the Egyptian sages as a refuge against the flood, while another proclaimed it to have been the treasure house of the powerful antediluvian king Shaddad-Benad. A panel of hieroglyphs over the entrance, which the casual observer might consider to afford a solution of the mystery, unfortunately dates back no further than AD 1843, having been cut at that time by Dr. Lepsius as a tribute to the King of Prussia. Caliph al-Mamun, an illustrious descendant of the Prophet, inspired by stories of the immense treasure sealed within its depths, journeyed from Baghdad to Cairo, AD 820, with a great force of workmen to open the mighty pyramid. When Caliph al-Mamun first reached the foot of the Rock of Ages and gazed up at its smooth glistening surface, a tumult of emotions undoubtedly racked his soul. The casing stones must have been in place at the time of his visit, for the Caliph could find no indication of an entrance, for perfectly smooth surfaces confronted him. Following vague rumors, he set his followers to work on the north side of the pyramid, with instructions to keep on cutting and chiseling until they discovered something. To the Moslems with their crude instruments and vinegar it was a Herculean effort to tunnel a full 100 feet through the limestone. Many times they were on the point of rebellion, but the word of the Caliph was law and the hope of a vast fortune buoyed them up. At last, on the eve of total discouragement, fate came to their rescue. A great stone was heard to fall somewhere in the wall near the toiling and disgruntled Arabs. Pushing on toward the sound with renewed enthusiasm, they finally broke into the descending passage which leads into the subterranean chamber. They then chiseled their way around the great stone portcullis which had fallen into a position barring their progress, and attacked and removed one after another the granite plugs which for a while continued to slide down the passage leading from the Queen's chamber above. Finally no more blocks descended and the way was clear for the followers of the Prophet. But where were the treasures? From room to room the frantic workmen rushed, looking in vain for loot. The discontent of the Moslems reached such a height that Caliph al-Mamun, who had inherited much of the wisdom of his illustrious father, the Caliph al-Rashid, sent to Baghdad for funds, which he caused to be secretly buried near the entrance of the pyramid. He then ordered his men to dig at that spot, and great was their rejoicing when the treasure was discovered, the workmen being deeply impressed by the wisdom of the antediluvian monarch who had carefully estimated their wages and thoughtfully caused the exact amount to be buried for their benefit. The Caliph then returned to the city of his fathers and the Great Pyramid was left to the mercy of succeeding generations. In the 9th century the sun's rays striking the highly polished surfaces of the original casing stones caused each side of the pyramid to appear as a dazzling triangle of light. Since that time, all but 2 of these casing stones have disappeared. Investigation has resulted in their discovery, recut and resurfaced, in the walls of Mohammedan mosques and palaces in various parts of Cairo and its environs. Insert. From Levi's Les Maistres de la Kabbale. The Egyptian Sphinx is closely related to the Greek legend of Oedipus, who first solved the famous riddle propounded by the mysterious creature with the body of a winged lion and the head of a woman which frequented the highway leading to Thebes. To each who passed her lair the Sphinx addressed the question, "What animal is it that in the morning goes on 4 feet, at noon on 2 feet, and in the evening on 3 feet?" These who failed to answer her riddle she destroyed. Oedipus declared the answer to be man himself, who in childhood crawled upon his hands and knees, in manhood stood erect, and in old age shuffled along supporting himself by a staff. Discovering one who knew the answer to her riddle, the Sphinx cast herself from the cliff which bordered the road and perished. There is still another answer to the riddle of the Sphinx, an answer best revealed by a consideration of the Pythagorean values of numbers. The 4, the 2 and the 3 produce the sum of 9, which is the natural number of man and also of the lower worlds. The 4 represents the ignorant man, the 2 the intellectual man, and the 3 the spiritual man. Infant humanity walks on 4 legs, evolving humanity on 2 legs, and to the power of his own mind the redeemed and illumined Magus adds the staff of wisdom. The Sphinx is therefore the mystery of nature, the embodiment of the secret doctrine, and all who cannot solve her riddle perish. To pass the Sphinx is to attain personal immortality. Continued. Pyramid problems. pt Smythe asks, was the Great Pyramid, then, erected before the invention of hieroglyphics, and previous to the birth of the Egyptian religion? Time may yet prove that the upper chambers of the pyramid were a sealed mystery before the establishment of the Egyptian Empire. In the subterranean chamber, however, are markings which indicate that the Romans gained admission there. In the light of the secret philosophy of the Egyptian initiates, W.W. Harman, by a series of extremely complicated yet exact mathematical calculations, determines that the first ceremonial of the pyramid was performed 68,890 years ago on the occasion when the star Vega for the first time sent its ray down the descending passage into the pit. The actual building of the pyramid was accomplished in the period of from 10 to 15 years immediately preceding this date. While such figures doubtless will evoke the ridicule of modern Egyptologists, they are based upon an exhaustive study of the principles of sidereal mechanics as incorporated into the structure of the pyramid by its initiated builders. If the casing stones were in position at the beginning of the 9th century, the so-called erosion marks upon the outside were not due to water. The theory also that the salt upon the interior stones of the pyramid is evidence that the building was once submerged is weakened by the scientific fact that this kind of stone is subject to exudations of salt. While the building may have been submerged, at least in part, during the many thousands of years since its erection, the evidence at us to prove this point is not conclusive. The Great Pyramid was built of limestone and granite throughout, the 2 kinds of rock being combined in a peculiar and significant manner. The stones were trued with the utmost precision, and the cement used was of such remarkable quality that it is now practically as hard as the stone itself. The limestone blocks were sawed with bronze saws, the teeth of which were diamonds or other jewels. The chips from the stones were piled against the north side of the plateau on which the structure stands, where they form an additional buttress to aid in supporting the weight of the structure. The entire pyramid is an example of perfect orientation and actually squares the circle. This last is accomplished by dropping a vertical line from the apex of the pyramid to its base line. If this vertical line be considered as the radius of an imaginary circle, the length of the circumference of such a circle will be found to equal the sum of the base lines of the 4 sides of the pyramid. If the passage leading to the king's chamber and the queen's chamber was sealed up thousands of years before the Christian era, those later admitted into the pyramid mysteries must have received their initiations in subterranean galleries now unknown. Without such galleries there could have been no possible means of ingress or egress, since the single surface entrance was completely dosed with casing stones. If not blocked by the mass of the Sphinx or concealed in some part of that image, the secret entrance may be either in one of the adjacent temples or upon the sides of the limestone plateau. Attention is called to the granite plugs filling the ascending passageway to the Queen's chamber which Caliph al-Mamun was forced practically to pulverize before he could clear a way into the upper chambers. Smythe notes that the positions of the stones demonstrate that they were set in place from above, which made it necessary for a considerable number of workmen to depart from the upper chambers. How did they do it?